Good morning, George.
It is a good morning.
It is a good, cold February morning. Not as cold as it has been.
Yeah.
So I'm glad about that.
We had a dumping of snow not too long ago.
Yeah.
And it's all gone.
Yeah, since we recorded last, I don't remember, but we did have the largest snow of memory here in Kansas that we've had. So we've thawed out since then. I've had at least a couple bike wrecks since then. So anyway, we're glad to be with you guys.
Yeah. Good to be here
today.
again.
It's good to be here. We're in our Paramount series. This is episode 4. And just as a reminder, we were reminding ourselves a moment ago why we chose the word Paramount.
Yeah.
You want to comment on that, George?
Yeah.
Why Paramount?
There's an ultimate importance to the teachings of Jesus, obviously in the whole of the scriptures, but especially in the way he taught, and mainly in parables. The way he conveyed information, the shape of the life of the believer, the disciple, as tied to the way of life in the kingdom of God. Mm-hmm. All of that is paramount in his teaching.
Yeah, that's good.
It's the highest form of teaching that we have in the scriptures, and it's that primary in importance, so that we need to get a hold of it. So it's paramount.
That's worth noting because it's easy to get. I don't know, for me, I think there's been a progression through the decades, I guess, of my life and ministry of the place of the parables. Certainly not a regression. Mm-hmm. You know, I think that early on they were sort of didn't know what category to put them in, sort of kind of a little bit unclear, vague stories that kind of solve them as puzzles that were supposed to now go solved. And so they had, as a result of that, I think it had the effect a little bit of marginalize them for me. Yeah. I don't think I ever kicked them out of the temple, but they were maybe in the outer courts.
Correct.
You know, so to use that metaphor. But yeah, what about for you?
I mean, there's hundreds of interpretations of each of the parables and what this aspect means and what that aspect means and who's the younger son and who's the older son. And you know, all those kinds of interpretations that I've accumulated over the years. But the one thing is true is that they've held that much attention over the centuries.
Yes.
And we're still talking about them. They're still relevant and important.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I have talked about the story of the prodigal often now. And every time we talk, like something new develops, right?
It's so true.
And we will continue to do that because they have that depth to them.
Yeah, it's to me, it's an example of what you just said is one of those things I never would have disagreed with that. But of course, as is often the case, when we really jump into something and give our minds to it, you know, in a deeper way and reflective way, then that takes on a bit of a life of its own, and you begin to understand just how important and how paramount these are. So
when you think of Colossians 3, 1 and 2, since then you have been raised with Christ, set your hearts on things above, set your minds on things above, not on things of the earth. You know, these are paramount. These are the things that are above. These are the ultimate kinds of things that when you set your mind on them, the richness begins to unfold like a flower in spring.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. And you know, the irony of that, as you were just now saying it, was Jesus uses things of the earth, often in the parables, maybe always, to get our mind on the thing that's from above, which is a whole other story of meeting earth in the person of Jesus.
Yeah, so Jesus, like, these are stories of intent for Jesus, like he intends to do something with them. The very fact that he speaks them, the words that are coming from him, they have the power to enliven us, enliven our souls, draw us deeper into the divine presence. they're designed also to provoke us in ways that in our slumber, in our spiritual slumber, we need to be provoked. We need to be stirred. We need to be disturbed by a new way of seeing things. And surely the people of God of that day needed that approach.
That's good.
It was a common approach, but Jesus has his own deeper understanding of reality than anyone else, of course. Right?
And that's good, because kind of going back where you started a minute ago with the stories of intent, I think it would be tempting, it would have been tempting for me somewhere along the line to maybe think of a parable as like, oh, Jesus is just, they're just out walking the countryside, and he happens to see a farmer, and he goes, hey, let's tell some stories, and that's not really what this is about. Jesus had given these thought.
Yeah.
Now, could he have originated that thought spontaneously? Oh, well, of course, that could have happened that way, but they're not accidental. There's just now, anybody out there got a joke they want to tell? I've got one. It's a lot more than that. There's a lot more going on.
Yeah, we think of Jesus as a spontaneous teacher, spouting off truths and axioms and principles right off the bat, right off the top of his head. We don't think of him as a student who studied deeply what he was observing in life. He knew the soul inside out of man. He knew the heart of man. And that doesn't come just from looking once.
No.
You deepen that by spending time considering things and praying to God and asking for wisdom and understanding and all of that Jesus had. And when he thought of these parables, when he composed them in his mind and maybe written them down, we don't have them, obviously, but he was telling stories that he was really familiar with already.
Yeah, that's
that he
really
played
good.
in his mind over and over, and the words and the nuances and all of that were factored into the final way he presented them.
Yeah, there's discernment embedded in it. There's wisdom and discernment, observation, reflection, maybe even I wonder if there are some parables that got thrown on the editing floor.
Yeah.
Like, I'll tell that, they won't get that one at all.
Correct.
Let's not do
or
that.
Or this one doesn't fit quite right here.
Yeah.
Like, I'll tell it here, but here in this particular group, with this particular group of people, they need something different.
Yeah.
Let me give them a different picture.
Yeah.
Let me give them a different contrast, a different comparative set of things for them to think about.
Yeah, we don't. That's really good, George. I can imagine Jesus looking in this maybe crowd of 30 or 40 and noticing there's 14 mothers in this crowd. I think I'll tell this one.
Yeah.
So, who knows? But that's not easy to. That seems very easy to imagine that he would have.
Yeah. I think we do need to give our minds and imagination, part of our minds, the freedom to think of Jesus in his humanity a little bit more than we do. Of course, his divinity is always there. You can't separate the two. But there's a humanity to Jesus that we can appreciate more and more as we study him as a teacher. Look at the work that he did in the preaching, in the healing, the miracles, the interactions with people. All of his humanity is coming out through those things.
That's right.
And we can appreciate that.
That's right. This isn't hippie Yoda Jesus hovering over the hills speaking really pithy things. This is the smartest human being to ever live.
Correct.
Who is fully a man, who's given thought, prayer, reflection, creativity, to crafting.
Who studied, who knew the scriptures inside out, and deepened his walk with God, and grew in obedience, and learned and increased in wisdom and understanding
That's right.
and in favor with God and man. All of that is part of his growing patterns
Yeah.
over time. Yet, never at any moment in his life did he regress into or fall into temptation with anything that would be wrong in the eyes of God.
Yeah.
Right? Never.
And the stories are full of examples of temptation.
Yeah.
He was acquainted with it. But they did tend to, I want to use this word, George, because I love hearing you talk about it. They tend to provoke.
Provoke, yeah.
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 Say a bit about that.
They get under your skin, like a father who actually releases the inheritance before his death to a son he knows is going to go wasted. What that provokes me. I wouldn't give my kids money that I know they're going to throw away.
Right. Yeah.
That's provoking.
It is to
Yeah.
consider that. Wait, who's this parable about? What's
What's it about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good. Yeah, I know I've learned from you to think about the word provoke differently, because it always carried kind of a negative, annoying, agitating manner. And it's not necessarily that those shadings are completely absent always, but he wants us to think. He wants us to wrestle with it. That's where we're trying to get at with provoke.
Yeah, Jesus' parables are questionable.
They are.
In the
Meaning,
sense,
yeah,
they're provoking. You have to ask questions.
yeah, that's right.
So the last 2 or 3 sessions, we talked about how paramount these parables are. We also delved a little bit into the theme of lostness
Yes.
that is in one of the main parables. And we're seeing these parables not only as specific stories that relate to a particular context, but there's an overarching, to use the technical word, meta-narrative kind of aspect to them. Like they're telling the story, not just of this father who had 2 sons somewhere in Israel at the time in 0 BC or 30 AD or whatever.
Yeah.
But they're telling the story of humanity.
Yeah.
They're telling the story of the people of God throughout the scriptures, throughout their history in the scriptures. So they're all encompassing in that way. So we talked about lostness, and
that's right.
we said a few things about that. People can refer to the first 3 sessions that we've already had. So we invite you to go there. But today we want to focus on one aspect of this universal approach to understanding the parables. And we'll deal with the prodigal story a little bit more in depth later.
Okay.
When we come to it. But at this point, we're staying in a general understanding of what parables do and their universal application.
Yeah.
And we find here God, the seeker.
Okay.
God, the paramount seeker.
Okay. Yeah, so just as a point of reference, George, let me say, George is referring to, when he said prodigal, there's a big story. It's in Luke 15. And then there's also 2 other stories that are not as long in that same chapter. They're all addressing this, what we're calling lostness. So we want you guys to know we're going to come back to and read those later. We're not going to read them in this session, because we want to make some observations and then later address some of the text itself.
We're not in a hurry. There's so much here that we can park and give our attention to reflect and our efforts and our energy, because there's a lot to be gained. We think by doing that.
We talked a little this morning about lostness. And I think I told one of my stories already, I think. See, this is the problem with George and me, is we don't remember what we've said last time, half the time. I'd like to blame that on our senior years, and I'm not denying it has something to do with it, but those of you who know me, I've been that way my whole life. I tend to wake up in a new world every day.
Yeah.
And I don't like that, but it's true. But so I'm going to give a rib. But I remember being lost as a child on the beach. I didn't know it. I was lost. I was just going for a walk on the beach. But meanwhile, my mother and father and brother and several policemen were looking for me. So I was lost to them, but I was not lost to me. But I remember realizing after I went on as a 10 or 11-year-old stroll on the beach during high tide and the waves were rough, coming back and seeing, wonder what all these police cars are doing. Well, they were looking for me.
Yeah.
And my mom, of course, was panicked, and understandably so. And that was an initial shock treatment of lostness to me. It helped me understand as I looked in my mother's face and experienced her embrace, realizing I'd been found, of the heart of God and the heart of Jesus in this thing of lostness. It was really a formative moment in my lad, as a young lad. I think you told a story about in the woods, in the mountains.
Yeah, we were camping. I was about 9, 10-year-old as well. We were in the summer. We went to the summer convent where we helped pick fruit, all summer long, apples and plums and apricots and all kinds of things.
Yeah. That
was our job as people in the convent, as orphans in the convent, and it was very enjoyable. I remember one day I ate so many apples I got sick. I mean, really sick. But I digress. Well, we went camping outside of the convent in these pine groves. And we were coming back, and on the way back, we're singing and chanting and acting up as boys do. And somehow I got away from the group. And it was dark, it was night.
So one more apple. One more apple.
and so I felt like, okay, I'm all alone here. What do I do? I think I know the way. So I continued walking and feeling this feeling of dread. What if I don't find the place? What do I do? How do I find it, Eventually I stayed on the road and got to where I needed to be in the convent. And there were a bunch of people waiting for me and welcoming me. And because they thought, we lost him. Where is he? That kind of thing. Just realize that lostness is such an uncomfortable thing.
Yeah.
Feeling.
Yeah, it really is. So if you have a 9 or 10-year-old boy, get a tracker, put it on.
Correct.
Put a chip in, but I bet most of our parents who are listening, or maybe all of us, can have similar stories. It's pretty common, of that feeling of...
I remember we were in the shopping mall. The twins were barely 2 years old. And my wife and I were doing a little shopping, and we just kind of walked. We knew they were walking behind us. They didn't want to hold our hands. They were 2 after all, And
fully formed 2-year-olds.
Correct. Yeah. And they wanted to walk on their own in a sea of people. And we kind of let it go, but just keeping our eyes as much as we can behind us, But it was a moment when, well, where are they? They're no longer here. And the sense of panic that happens when you realize they were here. I mean, just a second ago.
Yeah.
And they were so little, you could have lost them in the legs that were walking around. You wouldn't be able to see them. But 5 minutes later, in our panic, as we were looking, we heard on the intercom, "Will the parents of Hannah and Sarah please come to kiosk number 31?" Well, it was such a relief.
Yeah.
To know that what we have lost has been found.
Yeah.
And now you take that and you begin to think of God as the seeker, the paramount seeker.
Cool.
We're lost. He's not. He's the one seeking. He knows exactly where we are,
Huh.
right?
Yeah.
And he's not
Good.
passive about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's not passive about
Yeah.
it. He comes and he seeks those who are lost. In the parable of the coins, the sheep, and the son,
Yeah.
he's seeking, always seeking.
Yeah. So there's this sense from these three parables in particular, but obviously in general, one of the things that you brought up earlier is that Jesus understands lostness.
Yeah.
He understands what it means to be lost,
Yeah.
what it means to feel lost, what it means to feel like you've lost something or someone.
Yeah. I mean, he lived in lostness, right? Like he realized people around him
Yeah.
were totally lost
Yeah.
in the ways of the kingdom, lost in alienation from their traditions. They were oppressed people. I mean, he understood lostness at that level, and he was part of that lostness.
Wait a minute. Okay. Say a little bit more
He
about
lived
that.
in that lostness, in that lost world. They were people in their own land, but they had no control over anything. Somebody else was controlling them.
Yeah.
And when you're living this way, you know you're not in your roots, in your element, in your own skin. You know you are living a different kind of life. You're not where you need to be.
So he's living in a state of kind of social and maybe we would even say political lostness.
Correct.
People are
Correct.
estranged. They're living in their land, but it's not their land.
It's a controlled lostness.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a controlled lostness.
Interesting.
But then Jesus also would have known lostness like growing up in Egypt. We really don't know how many years he spent there.
Right.
But there he is. He's an immigrant.
Yeah.
He's living among a people he doesn't know, not his culture, not his language, not his religion. But he is plugged into the Alexandrian Jews that were there, and there's a large group of them. But he's still living in a foreign land, and that sense of lostness of his roots,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
are prominent, you know. So he knew lostness at that level. He knew lostness in the garden,
Yeah. Talk about
in the
that.
Garden of Gethsemane.
Okay.
Jesus is, he wants the will of God, and all of this is happening to him, and he knows where he's going, you know, and is God with me, and all of that. You can get lost. You can get pretty disillusioned in situations like that where you know suffering is looming and death is looming, and you can be lost in that way.
Yeah. It's not hard for us to get lost in our own head and thoughts and feelings.
Lost on the cross in the sense that all of this agony and suffering and the carrying of sin, the sin of the world upon himself, and the sense and the feeling that he's forsaken.
Yeah.
So there's that kind of lostness, and so he knows lostness.
Yeah.
My point is from the inside out, and not the lostness that we feel when we are sinning rebelliously against God. He doesn't know that kind of lostness.
Right.
But the normal run-of-the-mill lostness that we felt, you know,
Yeah.
coming back from the camp, or you felt on the, your parents felt on the beach, we felt with our kids, he knows that kind of lostness.
Yeah, that's right.
He's not a stranger to that.
Yeah.
And so he's telling a story of lostness, and he understands it from the inside out.
Yeah, that's really good. I wonder, you know, I hadn't thought about it this way till now, but we have a story of Jesus at 12 where he's lost. He's in the temple after his family has left. Now he's not lost to himself.
No.
He's not lost to his father God, but he's lost to his parents. They have lost him.
Yeah.
And
his understanding of that is so deep, Jim. Like, his parents think he's lost. They come and find him.
Yeah.
And they say, "Son, why did you do this?" He says, "Mom, Dad, I'm not lost. I am here doing my Father's business."
Yeah. Yeah. I
Right.
was only lost to you,
Correct.
but I wasn't lost to myself or God.
That's right.
Yeah.
And in other words, when you're with God, lostness is not
Yeah.
where you are.
It's not the final word.
No.
Yeah.
No. Lostness is when you are without God.
Yeah.
That's where the lostness is.
Yeah.
Whether you're inside the church or outside the church.
Mm-hmm.
You can be inside the church and be lost, just like the older prodigal. You know?
Yeah, it's good. I wonder if there was something that transacted when Jesus saw his mom and dad find him
Yeah.
in the temple, if he noticed,
The panic on the
yeah, and
course.
the relief
Yeah.
and the love that he experienced.
If the stereotype of mothers and fathers, the Jewish mothers and fathers we have in the movies
Yeah.
today is typical, you know,
Yeah.
you can begin to see how they're reacting.
Yeah.
You know, overreacting.
Yeah, we used to lose our son in the clothes racks, in the department stores, because he would, as a 2 or 3 year old, he'd go in there and hide and consider himself very clever.
Yeah.
We weren't finding him. We'd yell for him, but he wouldn't answer.
Yeah.
And over time, I think he got that. Don't do this to mom and dad anymore.
Yeah. But here's the great news is, and you know how many talk about movies. You know how many movies and television series feature the lostness theme. Just look it up.
Yeah.
Just look it up.
Yeah.
Just recently, Lost and Found, the 100, Lost in Translation, Lost here, Lost there, the Lost City of God, or the Lost Daughter, or whatever. It's just prominent.
Yeah.
It's a prominent
Yeah.
theme. The beauty is God is the paramount seeker, and he is always seeking. Listen to 2 Chronicles, what he says, 16:9. For the eyes of the Lord range throughout the entire earth to strengthen those hearts who are true to him. Like you have this image that nothing is outside of the view of God. Like he sees everything and everyone, so there's nothing that can be lost to him.
Yeah.
He's moving back and forth with his eyes.
Yeah.
Right.
It's good. Yeah.
Waiting to see if anybody's stepping here. I've got you. You're still within my vision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No matter who you are.
Correct.
You talked a little bit about completeness.
Yeah.
Particularly in the Luke 15 stories that highlight lostness. I thought that was really interesting.
Correct. Like you wonder, you wouldn't. It's not easy to notice 1 out of 100 not there.
Yeah.
Right? No matter how good you are.
Yeah.
You gotta count.
99 and 100 look about the same.
Correct.
Yeah.
And this shepherd doesn't think that's good enough. He thinks 100 is a complete number. And his flock is 100 and 100%. So he's going to go after it until it is complete.
That's good.
The same thing with the coin. Really, I mean, it's hard to notice 1 coin out of 10 missing unless you're counting and you're watching and you're observing and paying attention. But he's not happy that he has 9.
Yeah.
That lady is not happy she has 9.
She needs that 10th coin.
Yeah.
She wants that 10th coin back.
The 10th coin completes the set.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe that 10th coin is for food.
Correct.
That month.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah. Or for the next 10 years, because 10 drachmas, that's a significant amount of money.
Yeah.
And then 2 sons. 1 away breaks the family apart. He was lost to us. He was dead to us.
Yeah.
And now he is found. Now the family is complete again. Right?
Yeah.
Until the older son acts out, and then he tries to bring him back to complete the family unit.
Yeah.
That's the kind of God we have.
Yeah.
The God who seeks. The God who seeks. He's always, always, always seeking. And then there's an aspect in the story, like a global understanding, universal understanding of this story, where there's rejoicing. When God is seeking, He's going to find. Like it's not a question, will I find it or not?
Right.
He is going to
He knows
find
where
it.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not lost to Him.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're lost to ourselves, and all kinds of things can make us lost. Our pain
Yeah.
can drive
Yeah,
us to lostness.
that's
Our
right.
confusions can drive us to lostness.
Yeah.
Preoccupation with things of the world can get us there.
That's right.
All kinds of things can make us seem lost. But in this sense, when God finds, when He's seeking, He's going to find, and when He finds, He's going to rejoice. He's going to celebrate. He's going to be overjoyed that it is now complete.
Yeah.
And you know, God is not going to rest until His flock is complete, until all the coins are gathered,
Yeah.
and until all the sons are back home
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
daughters are
Yeah.
back home. That's when God will finally rest.
So there's a sense in which that story has kind of global,
Yes.
like,
That's why we're parking here a little bit longer,
yeah.
because I think, and I don't know yet because we haven't studied each of them yet, each of the many parables, but I think each of the parables has a universal application,
Yeah.
aside from the practical, formational applications to them,
That's good.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
And the prodigal one is a good model to see, like, this is not just the story of this father and these two sons.
Yeah.
This is not just the story of this woman and these 10 coins,
Yeah.
or this shepherd and his 100 sheep. This is the story of humanity.
Yeah. Yeah.
All of humanity is
Yeah.
like this. This is how humanity is.
Yeah.
The condition of lostness is everywhere. Right?
Yeah. And there's a God who is seeking.
Yeah. And when He seeks, He finds, and when He finds,
He rejoices.
He has a party.
Yeah.
He rejoices.
Oh.
So maybe we can close, Jim, with reading from Zephaniah, chapter 3,
Yep.
because it's God celebrating. It's God rejoicing over His people.
Great.
Zephaniah chapter 3. And maybe just to close it and read from 14 all the way to the end to 20.
Okay. Zephaniah 3:14-20 reads like this: Shout for joy, daughter Zion. Shout out, Israel. Be happy and boast with all your heart, daughter Jerusalem. The Lord has removed the judgment against you. He has turned back your enemy. Israel's king, the Lord, is in your midst. You no longer need to fear disaster. On that day, they will say to Jerusalem, Don't be afraid, Zion. Your hands must not be paralyzed from panic. The Lord your God is in your midst. He is a warrior who can deliver. He takes great delight in you. He renews you by His love, and He shouts for joy over you. As for those who grieve because they cannot attend the festivals, I took them away from you. They became tribute and were a source of shame to you. Look, at that time I will deal with those who mistreated you. I will rescue the lame sheep and gather together the scattered sheep. I will take away their humiliation and make the whole earth admire and respect them. At that time I will lead you. At the time I gather you together. Be sure of this. I will make all the nations of the earth respect and admire you when you see me restore you, says the Lord. Wow.
That is wonderful, isn't it? I just want to point out that in my translation, in verse 17, it says, "The Lord God is in your midst, a warrior who gives victory. He will rejoice over you with gladness. He will renew you in his love. He will exult over you with loud singing." We have a singing God. In his march of seeking, he is singing over the ones that
That's great.
we find.
Yeah.
I love that
Yeah.
picture.
Yeah.
Right? And then at that time in verse 20, he says, "I will bring you home." I will bring you home.
Yeah.
So that is like a summary of the story of the people of Israel, just like the prodigal parable is a story of let's come home.
Yeah,
Let's
that's
come
good.
home.
Yeah.
Because there's a God who seeks us and waits for us. And Jesus is telling the story not to the Romans. Eventually they will hear it.
Yeah.
But initially to the people of God. Come home. Come home.
That's good.
So my encouragement is sit with this a while, with your lostness, with the lostness that you see around you, and hold that in your hands, hold it in your soul, and begin to realize that you are sought. I am sought. I am sought after. I matter to God.
Yeah.
He's not going to rest until I am complete in Him.
That's good.
Right?
That's good. Thank you, George.
We're beloved in our lostness. Just one last
We
thing.
are.
And
Oh, yeah, sure.
And beloved,
Close us out.
and beloved when we return.
Yeah, that's right.
We're,
In our
we're never
fountains.
not beloved.
Yeah,
The Father didn't stop loving His Son when
that's
He was
right.
lost.
Yeah. It's awesome. All right, can't wait till the next one. Thanks, George.
Yeah. See you next time.
Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Soul Renovate podcast. Any of the scriptures or resources that we mentioned in this episode will be linked in our show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave us a review and subscribe on your favorite podcasting app, because it really helps us to share these conversations with more Christian leaders like you. And if you have any questions you'd like Jim and George to answer, you can email us at info@soulrenovate.us. Soul Renovate is a ministry of Christ First Counseling Center, and it exists to propel Christian leaders to abide in Christ and grow in His likeness. Soul Renovate is made possible by the generous support of people like you. If you'd like to support us, you can do that on our website, soulrenovate.us. And if you'd like to learn more about Soul Renovate, you can also do that on our website, soulrenovate.us. This podcast is produced by me, Dalton Huey. Our cover art was designed by Hannah Huey, and our music is by The Fox's Forest. Thanks again for listening. Till next time.